Okay, let's go ahead and call this public hearing to order. Let the record reflect that a quorum is present. This meeting, Madam Clerk, has it been posted in accordance with
Yes, sir.
Texas law?
It's been published and posted on the bulletin board and posted on the website.
Very good. Okay, and are there any public comments that have been requested of you?
No, sir.
All right. With that being said, we'll move to the public hearing itself. The purpose of the hearing this morning is to allow citizens an opportunity to discuss and state their views on the following. Item A is the proposed 2022 budget of Tyler County. Have y'all seen the proposed budget? Have you gotten a copy of it?
I don't think we've decided.
Okay.
Actually, I think that, she's gonna be bringing that today, or I think we're
Yes.
keeping the same budget except for the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
And Ms. Donice's stipend.
And the insurance and longevity.
I think everything's the same except for
Okay. Because I haven't.
that.
I haven't seen
That's
Yeah.
my
I know she was
understanding.
printing out a new one, but,
Yeah, we got the first
because she called me
Yeah,
about.
yeah. Well, that was the draft.
draft,
Right.
but this is, I think she's printing out the final.
All right. Thank you. This is the same as what I had printed out.
Yes, sir.
I did have a question for Lynette. Oh, there she is. Greetings. Hi, Lynette.
Hey, David.
We are officially in the public hearing, and there is a question that I would like to have for the commissioners, if you will share with them what my phone call to you was the other day, based upon the wording of what was on the actual proposed budget itself. On item A, it says the 2022 budget will raise more total property taxes than last year's budget by an amount of $227,066, which is 3.17% increase from last year's budget. And the property tax revenue will be raised from new property added to the tax roll this year is $138,837. So as I was preparing for this, commissioners, I wasn't quite sure if this was 138,000 a part of the 227 or in addition to. So I called Lynette and she said, I'll call you back. And so she did some review and refreshing just to make sure, so she called me back. Lynette, would you share with the commissioners that are here what the amount was that you had communicated to me, please, ma'am?
That 227,066, that's the difference between the levy of the no new revenue and your proposed.
Okay. And the
then
proposed, just for
percentage,
clarification,
yes.
the proposed is for 2 additional cents
Yes,
of an increase, true?
correct.
Okay.
And then that's the percentage is the difference of the rate divided by the no new revenue, gives you that rate percentage. And then the 138,837 is the new property added to the roll, which will, in addition to the 227.
Okay. So if we added what the
Those
2 cents would create, which is the 227,066, plus the new values that are added on from last year to this year.
Correct.
That would be an additional 138,837. And so we would add those two, and it would come up to $365,903. So a significant total realized revenue by the time we get to the end of the collection cycle for next year's budget. So we were looking, gentlemen, to try to generate 213,000. With the increase, it would be 365,903. So we're going to far surpass that particular amount should we go to the no to the proposed tax increase of 2 cents. I had talked with Lynette and with David over the last several weeks, as I'd shared with y'all before, and it seemed like that there was a historical pattern with the taxation that we would actually realize more than what we would experience during budget workshop, because we were only working off of 95% of the certified total of the values. So we were realizing every year beyond what we were budgeting and preparing for. So what appeared to me is that we were going to be okay in our total for the collection of the year with the underwriting of that cost for the 213 that we were attempting to gain. Now, I did a little bit of some calculations, and what I saw was that we had, with the no new revenue amount, plus a surplus distribution from TAC regarding our health insurance, which was about $25,000, a total shy amount of about about $30,000, okay? So if we're looking at it on the extreme portion of this, then it seems to me that we have, it seems to me that we have the capacity inside the budget already, either through reserves of $30,000 or possibly even contingency. Contingency's been hit quite a bit, as you well know, so it could be that we could just earmark $30,000. And we'd be able to satisfy this 213 that we were attempting to accomplish when we believed that we would have to raise the rate or to increase the taxation by that 2 cents. So I've asked David, if he will, to come and share with you what he had reviewed with Lynette and me this past week. I think it was Friday, as a matter of fact, Thursday, Friday. And David, would you mind just doing that for the commissioners at this time?
I promise I'm not going through all of this. Neat.
Okay, you will hand that to.
You want that down here?
Sir.
Just for the county auditor and
Okay.
two commissioners. Okay. Real quick, I'll go through all of this and then get to the part that I think that you really want to get to. Property tax calendar starts out at the beginning of the year. It's when we do all of our work, appraising homes, measuring them, coming up with the values. Then we go to the next phase, which send notices out to taxpayers, and they have a right to exercise coming in and protesting, so forth. Also, the review board will be meeting, and they hear any formal protests that are heard. When they're done, they hand back all of the records back to me. Then I have to certify that information out to each entity, their portion of that entire role. And then the truth of taxation part begins. And that's the process we're in right now. When you adopt the rates, everybody gets through, and the last phase is when that will then prepare the bills and send them out. Hopefully get everything collected on time. I want to talk just a little bit about truth and taxation. I had these pages numbered.
Okay.
So page 3. We were under one process from 1982 until a couple of years ago. Pretty much remained intact, and we had words like effective tax rate and rollback tax rate. The effective rate is the rate that would bring in the same amount of revenue as the previous year. That's not necessarily totally true. You know, the calculations for all of this is pretty long. We have to make adjustments. What it is the rate that would bring in the same amount of revenue last year on the same properties that are on both rolls, last year and this year. So if you've had new houses built, they're subtracted out. If you've had property demolished or taken out of the area, that's taken out of last year. So that we end up with a roll that's got the identical properties in it with different values and so forth. So that's when they talk about truth and taxation, they're trying to compare apples to apples, literally. 2019 legislature did an overhaul of the truth and taxation process. It's very much similar to what it was. The effective rate for taking new names is now no new revenue rate, and the rollback rate is replaced by the term voter approval rate. This caused quite a scurry around the state. Those different types of entities were being treated differently. They were lowering the rate that you could go up to 3.5%. When it was all said and done, it basically ended up at 3.5%. Except when there's a disaster, you can go up 8%. Or if you're a special kind of district, water district, they can still go up 8%. So the process is still kind of the same, but we're on a whole new system where if you go above those rates, it's an automatic election. There's no petition by the voters. We have to be more careful in approaching those rates. The truth and taxation also recognizes that if you have debt, if you have bonds to pay, warrants, certificates of obligation, loans, or it's like we do at home, we got to make sure we pay our debt, or they're going to come after us. Bondholders or the owners of that debt have a right to have enough taxes assessed to make sure they get repaid. And they have a lot of power with that. Most times we cover it pretty well, make sure it's going to be paid. But if they feel like we haven't done it, then they can come in and cause some issues. Flip over to page 6 and 7. Page 6, there's a comparison of last year to this year of different types of property and so forth. If you just go down to there's a box that says total, all market, about halfway down, a little less than halfway down the page. Last year's value was 2.8 billion. This year's 3.2 billion. And that's exciting in a way, but a lot of that gets whittled away because of the productivity, the agricultural timber valuations. When we do that, it drops to 1.9 billion. And then when we take out the homestead cap loss, on homesteads, we can only go up 10% a year. If we go up 30, then we can't get after that other 20% until next year. We go up another 10%. So we lose value out of that total because of that. And then exemptions at the bottom. So we end up with a value of almost 5 billion before the regular homestead type exemptions come into play. I'm not going to go into those right now. What I did want to bring your attention to is page 7. It lists properties by category. I'm not going to go through all of them, but category A, category E, and category M are residential properties. And as you well know, you'll probably got notices from us. Those values went up in those categories. So yes, pretty significant increase. And the other ones were up and down, but I wanted to make sure you understand when we go through this truth and taxation process, and the law or the legislators say, well, they're going to lower the rate to offset the increase. It was never dollar for dollar, because in order for it to be dollar for dollar, every property would have to have gone up. So it's a shift that will happen, as a result of this reappraisal. It's not gonna be real bad, but it probably is good to know that going in and voting on a tax rate, of how that might affect the local citizens and so forth. Page 8. There's one column there that says certified and another column that says ARB review. The top part of that is July 25th. That's the original certified value. 1.1 billion for most properties. The column that says ARB review was 31.5 billion. That means we had 31.5 billion tied up still in protest. That now, up to September 2nd, has been whittled down to about 14 million. So we've moved a lot of value over to the certified category, certified column. We had 17 million that was resolved. We ended up with 14.7 million. That was the review board's rulings. So we got about 85% of what was under protest. That's good that we've moved a lot and we still have some to go. The only reason I bring this up is if we lose 15% of what's remaining, then my numbers are going to be slightly, my estimates will be slightly high. Not anything I think worried about, but just know if I'm $100,000 below in value, then it's probably because of those protests.
Mr. Davis, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, on the freeze taxable, those people that are in that area of being frozen, their values, can they still go up and,
Yes.
and bring their taxes up?
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
Let me explain because it's real confusing. What gets frozen is the taxes that they pay in the first year that they were over 65. So whatever they paid, $600, whatever it happened to be, in the following year, there will be $600 and every year thereafter, regardless of what we do with values. Well, the freeze will stay there. Their taxes can go down if, by luck, taxes go down, but it could come back up to that ceiling. So legally, it's called a ceiling as opposed to a freeze. What I do here is to pull that value out of all of the people that are over 65 because we don't get to tax 100% of that. So I pull out the entire value, and then farther down the list, don't show it on this chart. I've got one with it on there. Farther down the list, when y'all calculate the taxes, then we're going to add back what they pay. Because everybody's different. If you were 65 in 1987 and you're still around, you're still frozen at levels way, way back. You may not be paying anything. I may have the exact same house that that person does. My taxes are going to be several $100 more because the value is higher and the freeze doesn't get down as low as it. So there's no way to equalize that.
Yes, sir. And the schools can bring it up. The school districts with the values, they're not truly frozen.
The values
Yeah.
are not frozen,
Yeah.
but the taxes
To the schools,
There's-
to the schools,
Yes.
to this point,
and the county.
and the county, okay.
That's right.
That's correct.
One thing you have to remember that I forget to tell sometimes is if there's property that wasn't on the roll, that gets added to, we calculate what the tax should have been on that. That gets added to the freeze and they get a new freeze established. That's been a real headache, a real problem for us. Lots of complaints. James White's been working on it, trying to figure out a way we can get around it. But just because we did pick up something there 15 years ago, we now add it. That's a big blow for someone to have to deal with it. So we're working on it. try to figure it, but that's the only time it can be unfrozen. A school district, if you pass away, and you're over 55, you get to continue to freeze. As long as the spouse is over 55 and doesn't remarry. Let's think of the county too.
It's the same.
So it's true if they stay within the county. Now, if they move to Jasper, you can carry the percentage of benefit with you. So if I was saving 55% in Tyler County, then I get to take that 55% benefit with me. And whatever the tax is calculated up over there, we deduct 55%. You can move from one school district to another anywhere in the state. They did not do that in the county. So you can't move from one county to another, you can move within the county. Yeah. So there's a little thing we have to make sure we watch. But the freeze is always real confusing. And it's almost like I don't even want to bother the people with the notice that their value's been raised because their taxes are not really going to be affected. Because they don't understand why they're getting it. And I agree. I mean, I'm getting older and I can certainly think, understand where it's coming from. Page 9. I think I would know this. I put 2020 and I said, what if we have a $500,000 roll, a 50-cent rate, that would calculate out to $2,500 in revenue. All three of those columns under 2020 are correct. They're just different ways of getting to the different answers. But what's highlighted in blue is what if the value went down to $450,000 and kept the same rate? Then the revenue would be $250 less than it was the year before. Or what if I want to reduce my revenue from $2,500 to $2,000? It would require a rate of 40 cents, and you reduce the rate. And then the opposite of that is if you wanted to raise the rate to 60 cents, it would bring in 416. So there's different ways of calculating that. The concept is higher the value, lower the rate. That's what the legislators were really harping on when they passed this legislation, and hoping that the cities, counties, schools, and everybody would take heed. They just don't know all of this other stuff happens underneath of all of that.
David, is it fair to say the values are gonna move? And then that's the whole purpose of you providing that understanding to us to use as a base. Then our budget may possibly move. It may go up, may go down. So what we're looking to do is take our budget against the values to determine the rate against those values to satisfy our budget's needs. So the variable is definitely the rate.
Right.
Two stabilizers would be the values, which have the potential to move, but those are the two things that are needed in order to figure out what that rate is. And I say that because through the years, we used to look at the rate based upon how it would have an impact to the homeowner. And we would say, well, we've only gone up a penny, but against that rate, it has an effect, yeah. It has
Values are higher, that penny's proven calculate more tax.
correct, which is what Lynette explained a little bit earlier based upon what the proposal of the 2-cent increase.
So there's actually an example of the effect on a homestead in the ad.
Yes.
And so-
Yeah, it does have that.
Now to the important page. In the back, after these 2 pages, just demographic information that I found from the East Texas Development Association, population, education, things like that. I'm not gonna go into any of that. Page 10 has 4 boxes on it. The top box is last year's levy, 2020 general fund levy. You qualify all this, you're not gonna be able to find the exact dollars that I have listed. We're talking about millions. I'm using current information, whereas we have certified information that's used in the ad and all that, but still should be about the same. I've also included the certified part of the review board properties that have been moved over. But the examples would stay the same, and it's apples to apples. The first box is your last year's tax rate, last year's value, as adjusted, at a 94% collection rate, would be $7.266 million. The next box is the no new revenue rate of 62.92, at a 94% collection, would be $7.3 or $4 million. That would mean $93,000 more than the year before. It's simply taking 7.3 million, subtracting 7.266 million. I first did this, I went to the proposed rate of 2 cents, which is the last box, and showed that 0.6492, that the 94% collection rate comes up to $307,535. Then I thought, let me just go ahead and throw the penny in there in between. So I did one at 6.392. This basically tells you that every penny is worth $100,000. If that helps. The next page after that is the county special fund. I just used last year's rate and the no new revenue rate. I don't think y'all were proposing to increase that. And everything after that is information about our population in our county. So with that, I think raise any questions.
Let me just speak to what it meant to me, commissioners. When he calculated that the no new revenue on the general fund was going to generate $93,243. And then we add that to the next page, which is the county special for the 2021 levy, which would be $54,853. That's a net increase of $148,000, $148,096. And this is what I was explaining a little bit earlier. If we subtract that from the 213, which was the conversation that you were having during the budget workshop, that you were hopeful that the 2 cents, which is why the proposal was put forth, to capture that 213. So today, based upon what David is presenting to us, we can take confidence in knowing that at no new revenues, we're still going to realize $148,000, $148,096, and that will leave us a difference of the $64,904 that we were trying to accomplish to the 213. Now, if we take off the 25,000, and it's roughly 25,000, it's not exact, but it's right at, from the surplus distribution on the health insurance from TAC, which we got in 2 weeks ago. It's kind of peculiar because it showed a date in July that it was calculated on the stub itself, the check stub, when it arrived to the office. It showed a date, in June. In July, it showed a date that it was actually printed, but it didn't get to the office until like the 24th of August, whatever 2 weeks ago it was. So I just thought that was interesting. It would have been helpful for us if we would have known it, possibly, that we're trying to accomplish a $55,000.
Part of the problem is, when I certify, we literally are running ragged to follow the calculations and the effective, or the no new revenue rate and rollback rate. You're not really even looking at this is raw data. This is what the entire value that's available would be if it were taxed. It would be hard to try to come up with it would be hard.
David, my comments were not toward the appraisal district and the work there. It was toward the check that we received from Taxation of Counties in a distribution of the surplus amounts because we're in a pool. Had we have been aware of that at that point, we knew that we were looking at a $55,000 increase on our health insurance costs.
Right.
And we could have said, hey, we got this $25,000 back from last year's pool. So we're really only looking at $30,000 of an impact going into 2022. So as I've calculated this,
A lot of this depends on budgeting. This is the raw tax roll value. Pulling out, this column here is where we pull out that over 65 exemption. Here's where we add back the money, over here on the right, toward the right side. Like in the top, $657,000. So we do get to collect $600,000 on that 171 million we're taking off.
And the reason I asked that earlier is because I was understanding that the county taxes were frozen, but school taxes could go up by the value.
No, it's treated the exact same way. County, city, schools, anybody that adopts it. Schools mandated, but the county and the city are voted on by the court or by the voters that want to petition. But they're treated exactly the same way. So there's no freeze in value like there is in California. So,
David, are you aware of the constitutional amendment that's in November and it has something to do about tax free? That'll affect us, I guess, next year.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There were two bills that passed. One, if you buy a house mid-year, you can get your exemption for the entire year. As it is right now, you have to own it on January the 1st and qualify for the exemption in order to get it for that year. The over 65 and disabled exemptions, for a long time, we've been given the exemption for the full year. So if I turn 65 in August, then I'll apply for it and I get it for the whole year. They've simply now made the regular people to get their exemption in the same way. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of money. I'm still trying to figure out the political benefit of them rushing that through and the governor signing the bill. It's only going to affect those people that are new. It's not going to help anybody else. Now, the other bill that passed, school districts had to go down on their tax rates and call it compression of the rates. And that's happened 2 or 3 times over the last 2 or 3 years. That benefited everybody, all taxpayers, because they all got benefit of that lower tax rate. Except the over 65 were frozen at a lower level. So even if their compression caused a lower tax, it still might be above that ceiling. So they got no benefit for the most part. This bill is making us go back to 2019 and recalculate each year. So that beginning in 2024, I think it is, we can start reducing the school taxes for those people so that they can get a benefit out of it. the reason they put it January 1st, 2024 is they've already passed their appropriations bills in Austin, so they can't do anything in this next 2-year biennium. So they made it effective January 1st, 2024. Legislature's gonna meet again between now. We don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if there's any other bills that have passed.
Well, I just remember that particular one being on our, sample, our sample ballots that were prepared.
There may be one about people that are over 55, if they're disabled. There may be one that affects them, puts them on the same pattern as the over 65. For the most part, out of 400 or 500 bills that they passed on property taxes, there wasn't a whole lot that passed. And I think a lot of it, they think that they took care of everything 2 years ago. We'll see. And they should have took care of it. Budgeting. I don't do budgeting except for my own budget. So this is based on just me getting on a calculator and running these numbers out. Some entities don't budget all of the frozen tax. They kind of use that to help make sure they have enough to go the next year. I put it in here. Mine includes it. So, there's different ways of doing the budgeting. And I'm sure that there's ways that you want to feel comfortable when you pass a budget, especially as big as y'all do. So anyway, it's not any funny math. It's just taking and running it right out and off the sheet.
I think for just hearing purposes and this particular action that we're doing today is just having some conversation about some facts and maybe supportive types of truths so that when a decision is made, then you can feel comfortable with not it being from one of our voices, but being from the voices that are actually charged with helping us to make decisions based upon our responsibilities. I would probably add that we saw last year during budget workshop about a $300,000 amount of money that we could cut, did not. It's still in the budget. So we're generating that amount in addition to this other that we have moved it somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is, but the point being is we should be okay if we don't impose taxes to be able to meet the budget that's in front of us with as close of a numbers that are available to us today based upon what David said. So I had made a comment to y'all that I could not support a tax increase, but I didn't have all of the reasons why. I just had that gut feeling. And now I'm at peace that I understand, because I'm not opposed to raising taxes whenever it's appropriate. But the question that kept coming up for me is it appropriate at this particular time? And I'm okay that we can operate off of the same budget next year. We can do some things internally to be able to address some requests that maybe the angst that was
When do y'all have to vote?
at 11 o'clock.
Oh, today.
So,
I'm looking at the 94%. What did you say the collection rate was last year?
Last year was 94%.
It was, is
Yeah, that's why I use
is that what it ended up being?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And there's different ways
It's
that,
not-
there's ways, the state calculates that number different than the way we do locally. the state will say, add up your current tax collections and your delinquent tax collections, not the penalty and interest, but the delinquent tax collections. Add those two together and divide it times your current rate, and you may end up at 101%. You could be over a situation like that. But this is actual collection for the current year.
What
I hope I
scares
didn't
me also
contradict
is like
No,
the COVID stuff going on and so many businesses closing, and people aren't gonna get these checks and stuff. And the collection rate may go down.
It's kind of like grappling for peanuts, in my opinion. I mean, you're not gaining that much. When you see that we can almost cover it with, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so if you do raise it, you're just equivalent over $30,000 or $40,000. What have you done? You've raised taxes, and that's what people don't want to hear.
And but to your point, that's why whenever I did my estimated amount, how would it affect me as a taxpayer? On this court, equipped with that information, how would I process that? If I were not on this court, how would I process it? It's gonna still cost me $20 if we go with the no new revenues because of the increase in the values against that rate. Morning, Darrell.
Morning.
If we go up the 2 cents, it'll be an additional $42. So I'm still going to pay more taxes as a taxpayer, either way, but because of the value increase. But when you add the 2 cents on it, it more than doubles the total
And
impact.
that's gonna be for everybody 64
And
Hello.
yeah.
Let me make a couple other comments going forward. There's been a couple wells that have been drilled east of here. One of them I'm told is pretty significant. I haven't seen the production data on it. I've seen some production data on it, but it didn't look very close, but they may be holding back until they get the other wells. There's not 8 new wells, 8 new permits for drilling just in this past few months. If any of that is successful, we'll obviously see some increases on that. If it's horizontal drilling, it'll be like your history. You get it for a while and then it plays out and then goes away. But 2 or 3 of these permits were for vertical drilling, which is like 14,000, 16,000 feet. That's not fracking. That's traditional old time drilling. If those are successful, then we're looking at long term. I would hope if they are. So we kind of got that in the back, not really knowing what's going to happen, but that I'm hoping that we'll be all right there. I think homes, we're going to continue to see increases in value, as bad as I hate to do it. If you look at the paper, go on real estate websites and look and see what houses are, what they're asking for houses. And, they're getting what they're asking for in most cases, or at least close to it. And if that has to continue to be the measure that they're going to use for us, then I think we're going to continue to see some increases. Austin, Round Rock, and San Antonio, Dallas area, they faced that for quite a while, where things keep going up. We've not experienced that like they have. We no longer have timber companies like we used to have. They are sold off to real estate investment trusts. Some of those could care less about timber production, and they're just selling off property, getting $5,000 to $10,000 an acre. We don't get the benefit of that as long as they continue to produce timber. So that's a big issue that we're looking at. I don't know if legislature can solve it because it's going to appear to be taking away something from timber interest. But that's a big thing. But the state will grade us on those values as well. So it's gonna be tough. Um,
David, would you share with the commissioners what you told me the other day about if we preserve this increase to next year, should we need it? If we go with the tax increase, either 1 or 2 cents, or the 2 cents that's proposed, David was saying that it could have an impact upon us next year if we do that this year. But the term was if we could bank that option this year and exercise it in a future year if we needed to.
And what it is, we have this no new revenue rate, and then we have the voter approval rate. You're not going to the voter approval rate. So the difference between what you end up adopting and that voter approval rate will be, I call it banked. It'll be held over here. Then next year, if you need it, you can get into that before it'd be added to your voter approval rate. So your voter approval rate would be a little higher, because you didn't use the other. And so it gives you some satisfaction that maybe you can, if this ends up being a mistake, the way you'll vote, and doesn't work out, then you'll be able to kind of take care of it next year, so you can still have access to those pennies that are there. We do that for 3 years. This year, there was a small increase, 1.4 cents or something like that. That was added. We could only go back 1 year this year. Next year, we'll be able to go back 2 years. The year after that, we'll go back 3 years. And then it's a 3-year rolling number as we go forward. So that is a good thing.
And what are we at right now with the 2 years they went for the last 2 years, correct? No new revenue?
That sounds right. Because I
Yes,
think
that's right.
Stephen's comment
That's right.
had said we haven't gone up on taxes since 2017.
So how much would that be banked right now?
Well, we can only go back to 1 year.
To 1
That's
year.
1.44 cents, I think.
1.04.
Okay, so
I thought I brought the whole thing in, but I didn't. I'd have to check and see.
okay, I'll get back. with
But-
you.
If you're able to adopt budgets that are lower than the tax rate's lower than the voter approval rate, the good news is you've got access to that in future years. And in the fourth year, this year will drop off and you pick up the 3 current years. So that is a pretty good thing.
Hey, Mike. Yes, sir. We just been going through some information David's been sharing with us, and he was telling us that in the event that we don't go up the 2 cents, we can actually bank that to next year. So if we see that we would need it next year, whenever we're going through budget workshop, it gives us a broader spread from the voter approval rate to the no new revenues rate. And he used the term bank it, because you can go back a couple of years and pick it up. So, and what we'd also talk about is that if with the new figures as of today that he's calculated for us, it looks like that we might possibly be within about $40,000 total of what we will realize in collection rate from the no new revenues. And we could underwrite that cost against the retirement account, the insurance, and then the longevity out of our reserves. I mean, that's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket versus having to go to either 1 cent or 2 cent of an increase to try to cover that deficit that we were thinking that we would need to try to hit. But if we don't do it this year, we can pull back, or we can pull that forward to next year. So we'll still be okay. Did I miss?
Would that include I know we've used like $1.5 million or something to balance this past year's budget or something? I mean, are we still gonna be able to recoup that much money to cover that difference?
It was
money we used out of our.
more like 3 cents.
Yeah, that's the.
So that you already got 3 cents banked from last year. And then the difference. It gets confusing because you gotta add the two rates together. So 0.9428. What is the proposed rate?
Plus six.
Together with, added together, the two funds?
186,
Point 636492. No,
no, added together, but,
yes.
Plus the point,
so it would be the road and bridge plus the, general. Okay,
Yeah. Keep down on there.
Well, the general proposed is 0.6492,
that's the 2 cents.
and then the county, special is the no new rates.
0.2384.
on the no new revenues amounts, Mike, it's 0.8676.
So,
Yes, but if we add the 2 cents to it, it'll be 0.8876.
And what I was looking for is what the next number up, what was the voter rate for this year? I know we haven't been looking at it. We'll take that this year and track down to the either the 2 cent increase or the, however you do it. That will be added to 3.3 cents. You already got banks, which could put you over a dime in the bank.
So that would be a good position for us to be in the event that next year looks different. Mike, I know what you're talking about, and that's that carryover amount. I think historically, we've realized a greater amount than what we've actually utilized, so we've used that amount to adjust, to create the balanced budget. That should have no variance, because all of the expense that we had with the courthouse came out of the reserve portion of where we were. So it had no impact upon our carryover. And I think the thing that I wanted to understand is, could we be stable if we stayed with the no new revenues next year's budget against this year's budget with that 213 or 223 or whatever that figure was of the retirement, the insurance, health insurance, and the longevity. And I think I'm comfortable knowing that. I don't mind doing a tax, I mean, you and I have done that several times ourselves, but I think that just knowing we will be okay next year if we don't impose any new taxes this year because of the significant increase that the values have taken. And to David's point, he had said that we have some really good potential wells that will, I heard a figure recently that one well could possibly be in the neighborhood of $30 million because it's a vertical well. And, we don't know that for sure, but it has the potential of being that. And with the permits that are being issued, that's where we've lost in times past. So if we can see a realize an increase in the energy sector and take that pressure off the homeowners, then obviously the rates are going to be, will affect the homeowners. So. Okay, it's 10:54. We have two other items on the public hearing agenda for the Records Preservation Archive Plan and Fee of the Tyler County District Clerk, as well as the County Clerk. And you will see those before you. Hi, Leslie. How are you? Good. Thank you. You too.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
that's 8 cents this year. That would be banked to next year at the no new revenue rate. If you go up 2 cents, then it will be 6 cents.
Okay.
That added to the 3 last year, you'll be up at almost a dime.
So we'll have a lot more,
Flexibility.
yeah, next year if things really take a downturn. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Right, okay, I'm just gonna, I had emailed this to y'all sometime yesterday, so I'm just gonna hit some highlights and save some time. So, what I'm here today for is our, annual archive plan, where we propose the, archive fee that we collect on real property records and court records. Now, the court record fee is called, it's a different type of fee, but it goes and it started out at $5. 2013, it was increased to 10. And then I've listed for y'all several things that it's been used for. Like Roman numeral 3, it's just in the past and things that we've done. We added, one we have completed is our original marriage records, the original record that was never returned back in 1800s or in 1900s. And that's like the second paragraph on, I would say page 3. That has been completed in just a few weeks ago. And so they are now in encapsulated sleeves where they can't be touched, except that plastic page that they're in, and in volumes where the public can now, when they're doing their genealogy, look at them. They're very, very nice. So what we still want to do is to keep up what we have been doing, but our old original probate records. Okay, so they have been in little, we call them shucks, like this, and I'm just gonna show you. So this is the next project that we wanna do. Okay, so inside this, now the judge is used to seeing our big blue folders and documents. Well, this is what the records look like back in, this one's 1863. So Judge, this is the inventory that was done September 29th, 1862.
Could we go back to that?
No. Quill ink. Okay. So this is our next project, and I had gotten a couple of bids on it around the beginning of the year, and it was like $482,000, which is a lot more than what I have in my records. I mean, I've saved up some money, but not near that much. So that's why we want to continue collecting this archive fee so that we can maybe get $100,000 done a year and get these preserved. So what I wanted to add is, like now to December 31st, it has to be Commissioners Court approved to continue that fee. But come January 1st, there was a bill that was passed where it's in the statute, it will no longer have to be approved through Commissioners Court. It's just by statute we will collect the fee.
Okay, we're at 10:59, so we do have our regular Commissioners Court meeting starting in about a minute. Donnie, thank you for that. Sorry we left you short.
No, that's fine, because it really didn't take that long.
Would you believe that the district clerk basically is doing the exact same type of project?
Yes, sir.
And that's the purpose of bringing it up, just so that the commissioners will be able to understand what you're
Right.
collecting the fees for
Right.
and what you're turning
And
around.
her project, okay, her project, I know that she has showed me, I think there's some old divorce and civil, it's in the same type jacket, same type brittle paper. And that's what she's going to do.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock. Let's go ahead and conclude this public hearing. And now transition over into our regular Commissioners Court meeting. And does everybody have a copy of the agenda? No, I don't. Donnie's, yeah, all I have tonight.
Okay. You got one?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Tyler County Commissioners Court to order. As administrative judge for this Court of Commissioners, let the record reflect this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. And Madam Clerk, all the postings that's required for notification have been satisfied. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It is the practice of this court to exercise an invocation followed by a pledge of allegiance. Today, Commissioner Stirk will be providing that activity in court. If there are any who are present that would prefer not to participate in this practice, or if you're online and would like to mute your line while that is being done, this would be a good time to do so. Okay, with that being said, Commissioner?
Let's pray. Lord, we want to thank for this day, for everyone that's gathered here. Lord, we just ask for your guidance in our words and our actions. May they be pleasing to your will. Be with all our first responders and everyone that's been affected by the storms that came to pass and the ones that are coming. Please watch over everyone, keep them safe. Lead, guide, and direct us in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Which flag?
Salute, pledge.
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay. Madam Clerk, have you been petitioned for any public comments regarding this particular
No, sir.
meeting? Okay. Hello, Sheriff.
Hey, one away.
Okay. So there's no public comments. That'll take us to Roman numeral 2, and it's the tabled items from previous meetings. You'll notice that item A is the premium pay amounts for the American Rescue Plan. And then item B is the appointment of election judges and clerks to fill vacancies. And then item 3 is the annual financial report. We do know that Darla Deer is here for that particular presentation, which was tabled. So is there pleasure of the court to remove from the table any of these items at this time?
Make a motion, we do item A.
Item A?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion and second to remove from the table item A, which is premium pay amounts from the American Rescue Plan Act for county employees and officials deemed essential pertaining to the American Rescue Act, and how and when it will be distributed. Commissioner Stirk.
Yes, sir. I spoke with 13 different employees of the county just to kind of get a poll, and it was not scientific in any way. Some of them were high paid, some of them were low paid, some of them were in the middle. So, but 12 of the 13 asked that it be a flat rate across. So that's kind of just what I will bring to the court, what I got from the people that were being affected by this. They did not have an amount. I'm sure it was the most money that they could get.
Okay.
And that's the same thing I heard with the ones I spoke with too. They prefer a flat rate as well as
Mike or Joe, any?
Well, I kind of have a concern because, I mean, there are a few part-time employees that have been essential as well as the full-time employees, you know, not necessarily all of them, but I don't know how we would capture that to recognize them as well, you know.
I think that's gonna be a different agenda item though. I think that was a separate agenda item from last time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure didn't we already?
Yeah, it was all full, what we voted on was full time, so we got to change that, we'll have to put it back on the agenda and go back to it.
Commissioner, contemplated that and believed that, I was looking for the figure, but we have a substantial amount of part-time employees that honestly, they are as essential in their contributions to the functions of county government. So a consideration of something is, it seems to be appropriate that we look at that. Don't know what that non-scientific poll would be, Commissioner, but at least recognizing that, because some have been with the county for years, and they've weathered through these challenges with us. They don't have to have full-time benefits, so consequently, they.
And another way to look at it is in positions and not the person. So we're funding full-time positions and not part-time positions. And I have part-time people that, you know, that work, you know, they're not working today because it's raining, but I mean, they're essential to what I do. You know. But that position is kind of where I looked at it as. Not the person or how long they've been there, because there's a whole array of that, you know, but the position itself. You know, if there's a full-time position that comes open, they could apply for that full-time if they wanted that.
We'd have to look at, I don't know how we'd have to look at it as far as hour wise or something. There's gotta be some kind of line there.
It would be lots of work to do it.
Let's see.
I don't have any part-time, but I agree. Yeah, actually, we do, because, veteran services, they're part-time.
Okay, so the way that the item reads, it's how and when it will be distributed. So is it your pleasure, Commissioner, that you want to acknowledge that based upon the poll, at least a flat rate would be the basis of the distribution?
Yes, and I don't know if we can break that down into the individual parts, but, you know,
Okay.
but that's where I'd like to see about the employees would be a flat rate.
Okay.
And then next comes the amount,
And then when?
and then the when.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So,
One of my concerns on, the amount, I feel comfortable with 3,500, because if the government comes back and says, hey, you gotta pay this back, I wanna be able to cover it,
Well, the employees I talked to were happy with any amount. I mean, they didn't have an amount, but they said anything would be fine.
these were just some calculations that were
Right,
provided for
yeah.
us in these three categories, 45, 4,000. In some of the information that was distributed to us down in Cameron County, they had done a pay scale type distribution, 2,500, 3,000, and then 3,500. So is it the wish of the action that we go ahead and agree or vote on just a flat amount at this time, and then we can come back and do the when and possibly even the who?
Yeah.
With taking into consideration the part-time in addition to the other. Would you want to take some action on this item in that format right now?
Yes, we can do that, break that agenda item down as, I make a motion to do it as a flat rate.
So that's the how.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if we can vote on part of the agenda item or just agree on that part and then go to the next part.
How about we entertain an amending of the motion to just limit it to right today, the how?
Okay.
Would that be
Yes.
acceptable? Okay, help us out, Buck. So we need an amendment to the
Well,
motion that's on the floor.
I don't see why we just don't do what it says. I mean, that's what the motion,
For how and
I mean, how and when it will be, I mean, we can break it down, but I don't really see the point.
do we not know when we can do it? Is that what the?
No, we just need to decide today when we are going to do it, if we're going to do it.
And we can always come back and do the part-time.
Right, yeah, just have to make on a different agenda item to do that.
Because that's not if we sit down and discuss at length.
Yeah, it's gonna be,
Because you got people that are part-time that have worked 6 months and some that worked 16 years,
Right.
you know. I mean, that's a total separate beast.
So we need a motion.
How about if I put the motion for a flat rate of $3,500 across the board at the next pay period?
Can I add something to that, though? It needs to be a separate check, like the longevity, so that we know what that was specifically for, and it won't eat them up in taxes.
So would we do it in between the payroll?
Yes, sir.
Give me a date that's in between the payrolls that will work.
Next week is the payroll, so the 30th of September.
Pay it out on the 30th. I make a motion that we pay out a flat rate of $3,500 on September the 30th. I'll say a separate check on any kind of payroll.
So the motion does have a second. Comments, questions?
And so what will have to come out of that? I mean, is that just taxes have to come out of it?
Retirement.
Extras on retirement, their deductions won't, as far as any extras they have with the retirement and the Social Security, Medicare, all that has to be taken.
The Fed wants their money from the Fed money back.
Yeah, and
I
also,
wonder, is it gonna affect any of them tax wise? I mean,
Well, that depends on how they're claiming it.
yeah, so that's really out of our control. We're just giving them the money.
That'd be next April, wouldn't it?
did we clarify
Yeah.
that it's gonna be people like starting at January 1, or y'all remember that discussion?
What
Yes.
full-time employees are included in it?
Yeah.
Well, I understood they had to have been working from March when it started to December of last
Okay.
year, because that's when the pandemic started.
So somebody that started full-time a month ago doesn't get it, right? Yeah, and that makes sense. That's involved in that time period when it was meant for.
What about the people that is retired?
You still have to be working,
Okay.
still have to be employed now.
So, no,
So what are the clarifications on that?
Hi, Leanne.
March, what did we say, the
March
first?
the 30th is when it all, I think, started, is when the federal government started or labeled it as a pandemic, because all grants were like March 30th to December 31st for it last year,
Of 2020
of 2020.
through December 31st.
Of 2020.
And you still have to be employed at this time. At the time of the check right now.
You have to have been employed from March the 30th of 2020, current, until current, to be able to be entitled to this $3,500.
That's correct. And the time period ends at December 31st of 2020, but you're still employed now.
What if I got a guy?
So no retiree from January 1st of this year, nobody like that can get this premium pay.
No, you're have to still be employed now.
I got a man supposed to retire September 22nd. It's been here 40 years. Is he not gonna get it, or?
I would say make a motion for a different day, yeah. Does he still have vacation time, work, be off on vacation now, if you want to burn that ass? Well,
Can
he's
we
gonna
not
start taking
change
vacation.
the date?
Yeah, he don't
Yeah,
have that.
so he'll still be employed, yeah, he'll be on vacation, if he has enough time to be employed to be employed.
Go ahead, Leanne.
I was just saying, can we just not change the date until, I mean, I can do a separate check, but can I just not do it on the same day as payroll, the 19th?
the date's the 30th.
Is what's on there. She wants to do it on.
She wants to run it all at once, is what she's saying, correct?
Separate, yes, just separate checks,
Just separate checks.
separate processes, separate whatever, they just do it all at one time.
I don't have a problem with
That
it.
on the
Well,
16th, is that what she said?
Are you saying on the 16th?
19th.
pay that on that.
19th?
Sorry, I'm looking at the next payroll, whatever the next,
19th is on a Sunday. Or
I'm
September.
sorry, 21st, I'm sorry, 20.
Well, 21st is when the time cuts off, but it's paid out on the 23rd, right?
Yeah, 21st.
Correct, but he would have been here the 21st.
Right, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not run all as one lump sum, it should be fine.
Right. So go through the 21st, is that what you're saying?
Yes, to the end of that payroll,
Okay.
because yes, it's that payroll. To me, that would just be the quick thing to do.
Then pay it out on the, with the same, that Thursday, right?
Will they be just in the form of a check or would they still direct deposit?
There'll be a check.
Don't tell Connie about that.
Will it be mailed or is that something you pick them up?
I'll hand deliver them.
You're gonna, will we get cookies?
If you like.
Yeah, I want some cookies for mine.
We changed it to the 21st.
Do we need, I mean, we had a motion in a second.
We had a motion second.
Yeah.
Every motion I get.
Okay, it seems like that there possibly an amendment
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem.
to change the date.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to the amendment? Okay. Now, all in favor of the amendment changing the date to the 21st? Say aye. Okay. Now, back to the original motion. I'm wondering if there are maybe some folks that Sheriff could have possibly been with you, or maybe in any of the other departments that, for whatever reason, are not currently here, but for the fact that they worked through that time period and this pay would have entitled them. I just wonder, Stephen, if we're sliding some folks that were in a significant window of this by exempting them out.
Well, Judge, I think, if we remember back, those employees that were with me at that time, there was an allotted amount that was given to each of my employees, and I say through the first responders, through the sheriff's department themselves at that time. I don't know if that's a separate animal or if that's still combined. That was COVID.
That was hazard pay.
Exactly. Okay, so that in, I mean, just in my personal opinion, that would cover, I mean, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I think that pay would cover my department itself.
No, the only problem I could see with going back and including people that no longer work here, what if that person is no longer is deceased at this time, then what are you gonna do? Where does that money go to? And we don't even have any other information
We
on
can figure out who's deceased.
tax withholdings or anything else.
Well, Judge, I think too, is and I'm just responding back to you address my department though. I think you're opening Pandora's box with other employees throughout the county if you're gonna, if we do that.
Yeah, I intended it to be,
I mean, yeah,
not exclusive to y'all, but
yes, sir.
yeah, inclusive to them.
I feel like if they've left the county, I mean, I could see that if they retired, but if they took another job and left the county, then I don't know that they should be held accountable for pay or anything.
Getting a bind.
Just posing a question. All right, now to the original motion. We do have a second. Any additional comments? All in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay, so that takes us to any of the other tabled items that you wish to take from the table for action. Darla, we're still here.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we accept the annual financial audit.
Okay. So there's a motion with a second. Comments or questions? All in favor, aye? Okay, Darla, you're on.
My turn.
Are you included in
Leave it on the table.
Give Jack a few minutes because I passed out. And I'm Darla Deer with the Belt Harris Project
here to present your annual financial report. So as usual, I'll go over about the three most important pages. And of course, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer questions that you might have. If you'll flip with me to your page 5. This is where we issue our opinion for the audit. You received an unmodified opinion. That is the highest level of assurance that you can receive, that there are no material misstatements and all disclosures have been made in your report according to generally accepted accounting principles. So great job on the unmodified opinion. Now I'm going to flip you over to page 28 and 29, and we'll look at the revenues for the county. So before I kind of go through those revenues, we did have a change as far as generally accepted accounting principles this year. We implemented GASB 84, which if you'll remember last year, and there's kind of a difference in the way we kind of handle, I know you're new, okay. We kind of separate them as far as special revenue funds and what we call agency funds. So the agency funds are not really county money, but it's money that the county would hold and they're in control of until it gets paid out to somebody else. So there were a lot of different agency accounts in the prior year report. And one of the things that changed with the GASB 84 was we included all those to be cut. Well, we had to go through and look at each one of those and see if they were a true trust account. So they were considered a custodial account, or we needed to move those more into special revenue type funds. So if you go back and look at last year's report under the agency type funds, you're going to see, I don't know, we probably had 30, 40 of those funds that were across there in the back. And a lot of those had to do with the fees that get collected in the different departments. So the county collects the fee, they hold it till it goes to the state, and then that's paid out, and then the county would hold some small portion of that. So those were kind of categorized back there in those agency accounts. So in this year's report, some of those type funds were included. We moved those to the general fund. So right now, some of that movement, there was an including amount down in your fund balance. So I just kind of wanted to tell you there were some kind of changes in the background that happened on the different type funds, but kind of before we kind of start going through this. On the general fund, you'll see total revenues for the year, $10,757,153. Total expenditures for the year, $9,437,391, leaving you that the $1,319,000 change between the revenues and expenditures. With the transfers in and out, that give you a net change in your fund balance of $1,926,397. So I'm sorry, looked away before I started to finish that. $397. So that left you with an ending fund balance of $6,820,635. So it was a pretty large increase in your fund balance. Now, part of that did have to do with the COVID money that came in. You submitted that in for the grant to get reimbursed, but that was also usually covered in your budgeted items with all that payroll amount, because I think that amount was 800 and something thousand, if I remember. So that would have given that amount a really good bump coming in for that change in your fund balance.
And Darla, doesn't that include also the money that's hanging with the state costs that we send to the state that we put in?
Yes, yeah. So some of that money that's you seeing in that increase also had to do with that state cost amounts that we were moving over. So that's why you're also seeing a little increase in there. We probably will have some additional changes this next year, or I'll be working with Jackie to see if any of the any of the amount that we included. And I'm gonna flip you back one page, or 2 pages, back down to page 24. You'll see how in the fund balance section of the general fund, we have that amount kind of designated as far as it being restricted or assigned to different areas. So in that very bottom number, that unassigned money of that 3,700,000, almost 4 million, there may be some other amounts that need to be assigned due to those movement of those agency accounts that we need to make sure that some of those weren't designated for a specific type. If she's collecting a fee and the county gets to hold a certain percentage of that, that it's not designated for something. So we'll work with her this year to make sure that we don't need to have that set up into a separate type account. And that would come out of that unassigned money down there. So I just wanted you to be aware that although you did see that change in that fund balance, there still may be something included in that unassigned that we may be coming back and assigning that to a specific type area that needs to be used for. I know that was a lot of information, so I'll slow. If y'all have a question on that one, or you don't want me to keep rolling.
So that $3,760,000, that's unassigned. money.
Yeah, that 3,760,000.
It's not designated.
Right,
We can use it for whatever we need, or generally.
Well, yes, generally. Now, that's the part that I'm saying we'll work with Jackie this next year to go back through all that, because there were probably 30 or 40 funds that we were implementing and moving up. I don't remember exactly how many, but there were a lot that we combined. So there could be some that we need to go back and say, hey, you can only use that in the judicial area. You know, so there may be something that we have that we need to come back and put that over into an assigned area. All right, we're gonna flip over and look at your budget pages, which are gonna be on 40, 62, 63. Now, the main area that we look at on this is we look at your actual expenditures and compare that back to the budgeted expenditures. And we make sure that those amounts are under the budget amount or at least equal to. So if you'll notice over in your variance column, you don't see any negative variances down in your expenditures, which basically is saying that you were able to meet the goals set forth that were set forth by the Commissioner's Court in that budget. So looking on page 63, just for an overall picture view on that total expenditure line, you'll see that the total expenditure budget was $11,497,000 in your final budget amount, but your actual expenditures were $9,437,000, leaving you that you came in basically under budget on those expenditures by $2 million.
And just a side note, Mike, I think that's where your comment a little bit earlier concern was, will we be okay? And obviously, it's strong enough to where that portion of the carryover will help to be the basis of creating that balanced budget. Okay? Thank you, Darla. Continue.
Sure. Let's see, and mainly just so you kind of understand how the audit's set up there, although on our trial balance, there are several different funds. We include several things on like general fund that we would consider a general fund, even though they may be separated as far as showing up on any of the reports that you see. So on page 92, 93, those are just some of the funds, or these are the main funds. The 93, 92 through page 95, those are the funds that we actually combine to make a general fund. And then we take those funds that have the fund balance, and those are the amounts that are set aside as they're assigned for those different things. So I just I wanted you to see when you were looking at that fund balance, and although you're looking at a large general fund balance, some of those amounts are designated for something specific that we have. And of course, I know all you guys just love your road and bridge fund balances, so I was going to show you where that's broken out. If you'll flip over to page 98 through 99. When we do the audit, road and bridge is all one fund. Although, so that's why you see it at the beginning is included all together. But we do separate it out in the back on these pages where you can see your revenues and expenditures. The assets and liabilities were the page before this one. But I just wanted you to see where you could actually go and see your specific road and bridge fund. The net pension asset this year and OPEB liabilities, that's other post-employment benefits. There was not much change, slight changes on those, so no big changes for that part. And that's the basics of everything that that we've got in the actual annual financial report.
So the 2 million that we came in under budget, is it included in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We still only have 3,700,000 that's undesignated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's just basically showing you on your expenditures that of what was budgeted and then what was not.
Right.
Yeah, what your actual expenditure came.
Basically, we have 3,700,000 in the bank to operate on.
Essentially, yes. And I think I saw back in there, I think maybe that would have been, as far as like, I know we look at the liquidity as far as, what we would say, the fund balance, the minimum amount required would be like a 25% amount that we would want to see down there in that unassigned portion. And I think, I remember seeing 40% back up in here. I gotta flip back and look real quick. I think that was the
We're above
number.
the minimum, right?
Right. I had that number written down and then I got off my line. But I'm pretty sure it was around the 40%.
There's a lot of lines in there.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was around 40% is what you're sitting at.
Extra.
What was the percent that you said on the minimum on one side?
The minimum would be about 25%, which is about a little over 3 months worth. So anytime that you would dip lower than the 3 months, that's the part that we probably would be putting a management letter comment in there that, for that healthy fund balance, any kind of disasters that might come up, that we would want to see a minimum amount of 25% in there, that you had 3 months operating expenses. And but the way we get that is we look at your expenditures and basically divide that out, what your monthly amounts are.
But we're at 40%.
Yeah, I think we're about at 40, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions for Darrell?
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Darrell, you're certainly welcome to hang around, but if you've got miles to go before you sleep, we certainly understand that as well.
That's right. Looks like I'm headed to Houston, looks like we got a little hurricane and a tropical storm. Yeah, I won't jinx this yet, right? All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, we have one more item on the table, section number 2, and that's appoint the election judges and clerks to fill the vacancies.
I just added that.
Remain tabled. Okay, thanks. That'll take us to our consent portion of the agenda. Madam Clerk, do you have any minutes that,
I do, I think it was September 7th, and I emailed out.
is that at 1 o'clock this morning?
Yeah.
Well, 8 in the morning.
127 or whatever.
Joe commented that you got up and read that.
Was that
Stay
number
on top of
with daughter's bathroom?
I must have missed all of that.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to receive the minutes as submitted. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. And it is unanimous. Now we're down to the monthly reports. I think we've got the county clerk's report in your packet, auditor, and budget copies. I've seen those. Are there any other reports that you want to acknowledge?
Motion to receive the monthly reports.
Second.
Okay, there is a motion to receive the monthly reports which were submitted with the second. Comments? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that will take us to our resolutions and proclamations. Gentlemen, I had sent you a copy of what had been requested by us from the Alabama Coshada tribe in support of theirs. It may be a little moot at this point because the judge has already ruled in their favor, and it's believed that they're still going to be able to continue. But as a gesture of continuity for each of these years that we have done this in their effort, I would certainly put that before you, that we would just let them know, because there's a number of others who've already acted upon that have sent their resolutions to them. So it's just a courtesy. Go ahead.
Yeah, we did get to vote on it.
Yeah.
Is there a motion you made?
Uh,
I'll second it.
Okay. To a motion for the resolution in support of the tribe for their gaming continuation. With the second, all in favor, aye? Okay, and there is a place for us all to sign off on that. That'll take us down to Roman numeral 5, and that's consider approved the informational portion of your agenda. Mike, is there any budget amendment line item transfers that I'm not aware of?
I'm not sure, Jackie, do we have any?
So that'll take us to item B, and we do have an accounts payable. Saw that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion with second for accounts payable. And comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye? And it is unanimous. That'll take us down to item C, which is the adoption of the 2022 Tyler County budget. Commissioner Marshall.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2022 Hunter County budget.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion with a second for the adoption of the budget. Do we have a final amount on this? Have y'all seen this?
Well, until I know what tax rate, and I didn't, but I prepared one based on what my guesstimate was, based on the budget workshop.
Thank
you. But those figures will have to change depending on what you adopt as your tax rate. For general, anyway.
You had it for road and bridge. If there's no new revenue, that's where you figured it.
But nobody confirmed what general was looking like it was supposed to be. So that budget you're looking at has a rate of 0.6782, which is what y'all discussed in the last workshop.
That was proposed, right?
Right.
And that was 0.67.
6.7?
That was last year's, wasn't it?
Yeah,
That's the last, it was 6.
Oh, it's 6.6492.
Okay.
6.492.
I have to remember to flip it back when I do it, because it changes it on the regular budget. But it was the 2-cent increase from no new revenue is what the numbers are.
Whatever was posted in there.
6.4.
6.492. Is budget?
So what would change,
I'm sorry, yeah.
It is okay.
so what would have to change, or what would change is the amount of what the ad valorem is, and then the beginning balance, the cash that's being used to complete, to balance the budget. And without knowing the rate y'all are gonna adopt, I didn't know what to do.
We were looking to accomplish 213,000 with the 2-cent increase. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Correct.
During the hearing, David had presented to us the new certified amounts that he had calculated. And based upon what he had presented, for Mike and Stephen's benefit, we were roughly about pretty close to $40,000 net between what the road and bridge and the general revenue was. David, you're giving me kind of a look. I added those two. Okay. So anyhow, if we were trying to overcome the retirement, the health insurance increases, and the longevity increases, we were gonna be able to realize within about $40,000, which was stable enough to where we could underwrite that 40,000 without having to go with any new tax rate.
So we're getting more tax revenue in than the numbers that we had gotten before, is that right?
David,
Do you
For the
have
sake
your
of-
paper?
for the sake of repeating, would you?
It's
would you
the
mind-
color.
Right, I guess my question is, if we're getting more revenue in, so the no new revenue rates are not really the no new revenue rates.
No new revenue rates is not really no new revenue.
So we have a new
Go
certified,
through all the formulas.
yeah,
Um,
so what we're voting on,
It doesn't take into account new construction.
right, that's normal, right, that's every year.
But when you do take it all in, the no new revenue rate brings in $93,000 more than last year. At a 94% collection rate. And a penny above that would be 200,000, and 6492, which I think is the proposed 307,535.
But a normal thing is for the new construction not to be included in your, in that
It would be,
number.
it would be included in the effective tax rate,
Right, normal, that's a normal
but
thing.
it is revenue.
Yeah. Next year it'll be included in that, one because it won't be new construction.
Right, right.
So the numbers we had were without the new construction, is that correct?
Well, this has been modified, we had $30 million tied up in protest. Over half of that's been resolved and brought over. So these are current, up-to-date information. So we've got 17 million of the 30 million, or 29 million that was under protest. It's now been moved over to certified category.
Do you take into account on those protests when you're doing the certified? Do you give a percentage of what we
Yeah,
want certified on that? Normally, like when you send us the first number, what they're still under protest.
Go to 80. See how I'm gonna do this. The first yellow line, I included 29 million in those totals, but 31.5 million was under protest.
Okay.
So 92% of it was included. Now we've
So you
moved some of that over.
included 92% of the protested in our rate.
Right.
Okay. And we've only.
And the law requires that we include that.
Yeah.
One of the part of that.
So, and you collected.
I think we
50%
probably
of that.
overestimated.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done, maybe it might be a little less than what I projected.
Yeah. But you always try to overestimate a little bit to stay safe, right? And that's all you can do is estimate.
Yeah, yeah. it's always
Until it's
good.
all over with.
Right.
There's no guarantee that the other 50% will not get protested back down, and you'd be below that.
One thing I didn't mention at the hearing, that may be of interest, is, this company that applies to the county every 3 years, Taxation. It's really good for us to identify properties that need to be measured and so forth. They have a product where they, compare 1 year's photography to the newer photography. And they'll identify tracks that may have something on it. to look at. Our problem is some of the property hasn't been looked at in 10, 15 years. So they have another product that we did purchase to where they take the sketches that we have in our file and compare that to the new photography. So if it was 15 years ago, the last time we had a sketch, then they'll identify tracks that maybe we don't have on or need to be taken off. We just got those results in, so we're starting to work on it.
That would be an
Quite a few.
ongoing thing, no, right?
If
As things change.
it works out like it has in other counties, we'll pick up some bag and tax money out of it. But
And that's
There's no way to guarantee
the
it.
photography is where the 700 people that had increases because they had new structures, right? Kind of the uproar of the public at sometime
Yeah,
earlier in the
yeah,
year was that was just new construction that was on their property.
You know, it's interesting, we've done that every year. The uproar was, we were so late getting it out. We did it in February. People had just paid
Yeah, right.
their taxes, and it was totally confusing to them.
So the only way to get out of that was to show that they built it between January and February, right?
Yeah. It was not an easy thing.
Yeah.
I was telling them earlier, that, part of the problem we run into on the over 65 is they're supposed to have frozen taxes. But if there's some building that's not on, then we have to calculate the tax if it happens just on that and add it to the old freeze and get them freeze. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's. Representative White.
Any
Representative
improvements
White,
are being taxed at, that's the new frozen rate or the
Right.
ceiling of that. So if they put a swimming
Representative
pool
White and I
in-
are trying to come up with some solution
Yeah.
that will fix that. He thinks it's within my authority to go ahead and waive that, not charge. My attorney said no.
Once we get to 65, have everything built that we won't build and don't build anymore, right?
And just so you understand, it's the tax amount that's frozen, not the value. We talked about that.
Value.
So that can keep going up.
And it's a ceiling, their tax can go down, right? If everything
Right.
goes down, their tax is just ceiling that.
And the governor just, I don't know if he signed it yet or not, the bill they just passed in the second special session, that will make us recalculate the over 65 with a lower freeze because of this compression of the lower tax rate for school districts. They didn't get any benefit out of that. We did, it's regular homeowner. But the over 65 didn't, because they're frozen. If they're frozen at this level and the compression only brought it to here, they didn't get benefit. Now, we're gonna go in and calculate 2019 to 20, 21, 22, 23, and give them a credit starting in 2024. Because it was just filed, there was no appropriations part in the current biennium, so they have to go to the next one. But it's gonna be a while trying to figure out all those calculations. Some people turn 65 halfway through it. Pass it on to you. But anyway, when they did that 2 years ago, I could not believe they didn't include the over 65. I could not believe it. Now they have. And the other law is, if you buy a home mid-year, and move into it, you have to wait to the next January 1st.
That's the trigger date.
Now, it's anytime during the year, so you get it for the whole year.
Okay.
Um,
So if you move in
Like-
December 31st, you can claim it for the whole year.
Get it for the whole year. So, and that was done as property tax relief. I don't see what that really benefits very many people.
Just know when to buy your house. Or build your house.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, we are on the adopting of the budget. We have the motion with the second on the floor. Additional comments, questions? I think what the three of us heard is that we're gonna be okay if we don't go up on taxes this year. We'll still be able to fund the budget as is. There's enough of carryover that Darla has already identified with us without having to impose additional taxation. And with one well being potentially in a $30 million value, and he's got 8 that are actually out there, we might be able to see through this year our way, and then hopefully get some relief to the single homeowner dwellings next year with that offset of the energy sector.
And that's, energy has to do with the market too. So if it drops to $40 a barrel, they'll shut all production down, and we won't get that. So it's all net economic. to not just be driven on whether they're gonna produce oil or not, or produce the oil, it depends on what they're not gonna produce it, they're not making money. So right now, they're making money, wherever it's at, $70 a barrel, whatever it is. Once it gets below that point, they'll shut the production down.
Which is what we're realizing right now. We've had a drop in that particular sector of the values in the county. But with the activity energized, then is it possible that we could see that? And of course, who knows?
Yeah.
You know, I think that, in talking to some of my counterparts last week out in Austin, some of them don't have any revenues, any reserves at all. I mean, they're literally operating off of yeah. And, you know, we're blessed, we're in good shape, and so I'll just put that out there as far as the comment.
Well, and also, wouldn't we need to adopt the tax rate before because if we have two budgets, you know, no new revenue, no new revenue, or this one, and if we adopt the budget.
You have to adopt the budget first,
Okay.
isn't that right?
Yeah, we-
And then a rate of
So that was all that money.
that we think we're gonna fund that budget with.
Let me just read to you from the budget, okay? Section 111.008, adoption of budget. At the conclusion of the public hearing, which is concluded, the Commissioners Court shall take action on the proposed budget. A vote to adopt the budget must be a record vote. B, the Commissioners Court may make any changes to the proposed budget that it considers warranted by the law and requested by the interest of the taxpayers. C, adoption of a budget that will require raising more revenues from property taxes than in the previous year requires a separate vote of the Commissioners Court to ratify the property tax increase reflected in the budget. So this is what is driving our actions right now.
So in review.
Please, Professor.
Okay. We needed how much? 213 to satisfy our appetite for the insurance and all that, correct? Okay, so, and with the no new tax rate. What page was that on?
So page 10 of 17.
So with the no new tax rate, you're gonna have approximately 93,243. And then what were the other monies that there was,
Well, you can't not add in for the same with the road and bridge too.
okay,
So that's an additional 54,800.
yeah, that's where that other number was.
Yes. So that's gonna give you'll actually realize $148,096
And then there,
at this point today.
today, and then there was another 25,000 that somebody spoke about.
$25,000 surplus distribution from TAC at the health and benefits. They refunded that back to us. We paid it into the pool. The pool didn't have as much of an impact as they calculated, so they redistribute that. So we take that off the top. And so that's gonna leave us $39,904 against that 213 that during budget workshop, we were attempting to try to cover with that 2-cent increase. So with that being said, we've already heard from the outside auditor, we're well reserved. I mean, we got 40%. Almost $40,000 is just a drop in the bucket compared to meeting budget this year. So is that what you were thinking?
In review, I just wanted to hear it all one more time because I know they weren't here a while ago, so I don't know if they got the full gist of it, but anyway.
The tax rate that I figured
Y'all
on
are
the
crunching
taxable
back there.
value that she first gave, was 1,135,335,451. The new one that he gave is 1,318,121,535.
which is what he gave us earlier, guys,
Right.
this page right here.
So the paper that I have with the estimates, it will all be different with the new taxable rate.
Yeah, so the no new revenue rate that we're looking at on the other two funds is not the correct rate. If you go with what's out there.
It's gonna change, should change a little bit.
But,
No, the rate doesn't change,
but if we're having more revenue coming in,
but it will make more revenue because the taxable value increased.
And there's still, what percent
I'm
out?
fixing to tell you the difference of what I had with the beginning.
Yeah, so there's still some more that will be added to it, depending on protesting and all that.
we had 92% of that added in already.
Right.
But we only had 8%
That's
difference there.
Right, that's correct. Golly, we're all coming onto the same page all of a sudden. So in other words, it seems like we don't really need to raise the taxes.
But
In my
if we are, if our, on the hospital and the road and bridge, if we've got no figures. Because we're calling it the no new revenue rate, but it's really not the no new revenue rate. That's where you're gonna run into a problem at. If you're saying, we don't need to raise this because we're actually getting more money than the no new revenue rate, what we're at, we're actually getting more money than what we got last year.
Commissioner, that has historically been the same, and I think that was one of the things that was helpful for me in this whole process, is to be able to say, we're doing that every year. And the
Yeah,
reason,
I know that, but what we posted is a no new revenue rate, what we're gonna vote on is not true. If what we're saying, we're getting more revenue than what we, in the workshop, or what he certified us. And like with the hospital rate, we're gonna get the same amount we got last year, but we're not, because now he has new certifications. So we're gonna vote on a no new revenue rate, which is not a no new revenue rate, because we're actually getting more money
So
at
what
that
is
rate than we would.
What would you call it then?
The no new rate would be whatever it takes. the rate
That would have to come
to
from him, the no new revenue rate, the certified no new revenue rate would have to come from
We'd
him.
have to recalculate.
let's think about it like this, Ann.
And that's every
On
year.
July
Every
25th,
year it tweaks, so Stephen, every year it makes a difference. It's a prediction, but then when we get the reality,
Yes,
it
I-
usually is more, but they don't go back and change the rate.
But that's what we're wanting to do on the general fund right now, is change the rate because we're getting more money, but we're not gonna change the rate on the other ones because we're getting
But I
the
thought
same.
the net revenue isn't a change.
But he's saying that it is a change. He's saying we go to the no new
No.
revenue rate,
No,
No.
it's not a change in the rate, it's a change in the taxable value.
right? So for us to get the same amount of money on that no new revenue rate, that means you're not getting any more revenue.
But that's not an actual, that's what it tells you.
Right, I
But
understand
in
that, but
reality, it's not the exact same amount that you got, that you budgeted before.
right, but you're saying this on the general fund, we need to drop it, but leave it the same on the other.
Well,
That's what they're saying, because we're getting more revenue, they want to drop the rate. Our proposed rate, they want to drop it down because we're going to get more money in,
to the no new revenue.
to the old new revenue rate.
Yeah.
So, but we're getting more money, but it's really not the no new revenue rate.
But yes,
But it's- this
You
is
went to the
every-
workshop with us.
Every year, I get figures in August because time crunch and publishing. And during that
Right.
time, and that's the figures I give y'all, but during that time, everything's changing over in his, I would have to recalculate all 20 entities that we
Right.
collect.
This is not anything that's new.
Right, it does the same
effective-
thing.
It used to be called the effective tax rate,
Right.
and it was exactly the same thing as far as.
But if we waited till next week, that rate would change again, would it not?
It
You
changes
could.
tomorrow.
You could.
Yeah, good.
Right. So what we talked about in workshop was that day. Now, next week, it might change again to a different rate. depending on what
I didn't
happens
change
in
the rate, I
Proclamations
just
and
used what-
everything else. Right,
I just used what y'all had already had.
right.
I didn't change the rate at all. it would be lower than what I got.
In other words, it's not gonna change from 0.6292 no matter what, correct?
Right,
It's
that's last
just,
year's rate.
it's just that you brought in protested tax stuff that had not been settled. So it gets added into the other, but you still keep that 0.6782 as the no new tax rate.
No.
No,
6.2.
Yeah.
We'll go
6.49.
with 6.2,
6782, last year's rate.
Right.
but no new
Uh,
rate.
The no new rate is
6292.
6292. Okay, I was looking at the wrong line.
That's the rate it would take.
So you're not
to
gonna
same
change
amount
the
of money.
rate, Stephen, no new tax rate is gonna be that 6 point. But because based on the figures that he brought with the updated taxable value, it means it would generate 645,000 more than what we had have thought in the beginning
Right, with the no new rate.
with the no.
So we're well within our,
Yeah, because if you take that in the million and whatever I'm doing to balance the budget, you're okay.
Let's think about it
And
like
everybody's
this. This was
happy.
helpful.
no tax rate.
On the 25th of July, by law, the chief appraiser is required to transmit to us a certified values. And he has to have at least 95% of that in his certification. That's what we use to begin our conversation and what those estimates are. So he sends that over to Lynette, correct?
Correct.
Lynette has a formula. It's literally a formula that she plugs in that number that he gave. It already has last year's amounts in there. And then it immediately shows her, which she reports to us, that our no new revenue formally effective rate is 0.6292. So that she then in turn transmits that to us, which we use as a basis of having a conversation about whether we're gonna have any more, how we're gonna build our budget. I think what we are seeing this year, that I don't know that I've ever seen, Mike, is that we're actually realizing more because possibly that additional 5% of values, is that?
That's not right. I do it certified, and she takes and puts that number in the formula. But several lines down, I have to put an estimate of what the protested value is. And we use the 29 million and put in there. So it's
31
included,
was-
it's
31
included
was
in the
protested,
calculation
right?
of the no new revenue rate. They just want us to do an estimate. So we don't stand to realize additional value from that, but we always have some supplements that come in that would be added. But I can't guarantee that that's gonna happen. But we use the certified value at the beginning of the formula. When you get down to whatever line it is, you have to put in an estimated value of the protested accounts. So that's part of what helps with 0.6292 force it down even more, so.
So the protest amount was 31 million roughly. And you estimated we would collect 29 of that. So 3 million of that, you were thinking we won't get.
What we've already received and moved over, was 85%
Okay.
of the part that's certified. So I've got to get 100% of everything else that's left, to get to where I estimate that.
Yeah.
And he calculated it with the collection rate of 94% that Lynette had reported back to us when she left the other day and went back to the office and ran the 3-year collection average, and it was running 94%. So what David showed me the other day is that he calculated in that 94% collecting on that total with the adjusted so that we would have a better understanding. Would we be okay if we went with the no new revenues rate to offset those inflationary items of the retirement without imposing any new tax? And with the exception of roughly $40,000, it looks like that we're gonna be right at it.
I gotta restate my comment, because I was using the wrong.
They wanna make sure.
Percent.
We'll make sure we're all,
Motion
Clear,
to
clear.
restate.
I wouldn't want you to come back 6 months from now and tell me I didn't tell y'all.
Don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
It's
So,
not gonna be quite as much of it's not gonna be over 500,000, it'll be below 500,000 is what extra revenue generated. Because the first budget I figured on was the 0.6492, not the 6292.
62.
So you're saying it wouldn't be 600,000?
It'll be about
It's not gonna be.
close to 5.
Before we need to worry about the rate, we need to adopt the budget. don't
We did.
we? Oh, yeah?
I thought we did.
no, we just have the motion in a second.
Stand up.
So this budget is based off of the 649.
Y'all just tell me what rate it is.
Correct?
No,
No.
our budget is based off of what we have to have to satisfy.
We
our
set the
act.
rate to fix something, to what we, on our budget. I'll make a motion, we go.
We go.
Question.
Okay, so the
For the
question
budget.
is that for the approval of the 2022 Tyler County budget, all in favor, aye, and I'll start to my left, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Commissioner Stewart.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner,
Nay.
Commissioner Marshall,
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson, sorry, Buck.
Aye.
Okay. Chair votes nay, so we have motion carries on the budget, 3-4, 2 against. Now that takes us to the adoption of the 2021 tax rate for the general fund. Commissioner Marshall.
The tax rate,
Yes, sir?
so you want a motion for what we're gonna set it at?
Yes, sir.
I suppose we'll go with the no new rate, 6292,
Okay.
or is that, we need the whole total?
No,
Or
this
you
is
set
just
one,
for the
yeah,
general
just
fund
general
right
fund.
now.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we adopt the rate of 6292, that's the number.
Correct. Okay, which is the
That's the
no
no
revenue
tax
rate.
That's correct.
Okay, so there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Comments and question? Hearing none. It is a voice vote on this. Commissioner Stewart,
Nay.
Commissioner Blacksher,
Aye. Yes.
okay, Commissioner Marshall.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Hudson,
Aye.
and chair votes aye as well. So 1 nay and 4, it does pass at the 0.6292 rate for the general fund. That'll take us to the adoption of the 2021 tax rate for county farm and farm to market flood control fund. Commissioner Marshall.
What was it, you know?
Lynette, what's the number on the flip?
Still on the road.
6.2382.
I make a motion that we set the rate for road and bridge at 0.2384.
Okay, just for clarification, that is the no new revenue rate.
No new rate, yeah.
Okay, so there is the motion. Is there a second? There is a second. Comments or questions? Okay, voice vote. Commissioner Stewart,
Aye.
Commissioner Blacksher.
Aye.
Commissioner Marshall, Commissioner Hudson,
Aye.
and the chair votes as well. Aye. So it's all in favor of that tax rate for the farm and market, or what we call road and bridge. Now that's going to take us to the 2021 tax rate for the Tyler County Hospital District. Commissioner Marshall,
Make a motion that we adopt the 2021 tax rate at the amount of
0.21.
3-3,
0.2133, which is the no new tax rate.
correct. Okay,
Second.
there's a motion with the second. Comments or questions? Hearing none, because it is a voice vote. Commissioner Stewart,
Aye.
Commissioner Blacksher, Commissioner Marshall,
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye as well. That's unanimous, 5. And that takes us to item G, which is the adopt an order setting tax rate for the county general fund, county farm and market, flood control, and Hospital District. So this is the order, gentlemen, that we are acting upon that will express what we've just done with the no new revenue rates on all three of what we voted on. The general fund, the road and bridge, and the hospital. So this is an order that we are adopting. With that being said, is there a motion for the adoption of the order setting those tax rates?
So moved.
Is there a second? There is a second. Voice vote, Commissioner Stirr.
Aye.
Commissioner Blacksher.
Aye.
Commissioner Marshall.
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson.
Uh,
And the chair votes aye as well. So that order is set. That takes us to item H, which is the 2021-22 financial report for Emergency Services District. Commissioner Blacksher, you have that for the court?
Actually, Don East,
Oh, yeah,
can you speak to that, or do we just need to receive that?
it's just information.
Yes.
Information on it.
Information on it.
Okay. So we're receiving this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Second, did you make a motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There's a motion and second to receive the ESD number one report. With that being said, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carried unanimously. Takes us to item I, and that's to ratify the property tax increase, raising more revenues from property tax than in previous years as reflected in the 2022 budget per local government code 111.008.
And Judge, we don't have to do that now.
Correct. Right. Okay.
No way.
So no action on item I. Takes us to item J, and that's the reimbursement to the Woodville Youth Football League to be paid out of the youth programs. Commissioner Marshall.
Yes, sir, we've got invoices to show where they spent the money, and I'll make a motion, we reimburse them $2,000 for the 2021 year.
Second.
There is a motion with the second. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. And that was for $2,000. Their invoice looked like it was about $7,590, but we are giving them $2,000 allocation. Okay. Takes us to item K, and that's the renewal of the maintenance service for Otis Elevator Company. Commissioner Stirr.
Yeah, I'll bring that in the form of a motion.
Second. There is a second. Comments or questions?
Jackie, there's no other, we've been using those drivers, just to, Otis elevator, we've been using that contract, okay. Mike, isn't that right, Mike?
Yes, yeah, those.
That's all, just make sure that was the same one.
Okay. We have that. Any other comments? All in favor, aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carries unanimously. Item L is a presentation on Section 3 as required by Texas Department of Agriculture for a CDBG grant contract on a water improvement project. Commissioner Stirr.
I'll bring that in the form of a motion, and get a second, we have a let you hear this.
Voila.
All right.
Voila.
And so,
Finally.
Okay, now I know this is gonna be upsetting, but I'm gonna do this kind of quick if that's okay with y'all.
Okay.
Okay, all right. I'm here because it's required that I be here now. By policy assurance, the Texas Department of Agriculture that you have a grant with, and that grant number is 7220470. This is our water line installation project we have going with the Tyler County SUD. All counties, all cities that have open contracts with the Department of Agriculture must receive this little talk I'm about to give you on Section 3. So you say, what is Section 3? Well, Section 3 comes from the HUD Act of 1968, which requires the grant recipients attempt to direct funds to low to moderate income businesses and persons within the area. If y'all will kind of pass these around and allow me to give out a few. These are the survey forms that we use to figure out who qualifies. This is also how I figure out who qualifies for Section 3. The same kind of information would be collected. A business is considered a Section 3 business if it is owned by a low to moderate income person, or at least 75% of all labor hours during a 3-month period are performed by low to moderate income persons. HUD does have a website where businesses can register for Section 3. Our office will post all bid opportunities on HUD's website. Business opportunities for this grant include administration, engineering, your prime, and your subcontractors. I do Section 3 in all your bid documents and have been doing for 20-something years. So this is not new. It's just new that I have to come tell you about it. A person is identified as low to moderate income based on the current income levels for your county and the size of your family. You may be familiar with these numbers from the survey form I passed out, which we use to qualify. A person can register on the HUD website and with the Work in Texas website to see job opportunities. Section 3 was previously determined by location within the boundaries of city and county. This has changed. We now look at a 1-mile radius around the project area and move outward until that includes approximately 5,000 people. How do I do that? I do that on the computer. I pick my target point and I have to start pulling out till I get to 5,000 people. They want it to be a circle, but sometimes in rural America, a circle can look like a starburst. So, but that's the main difference we're doing right now in identifying people. Our office will track the number of hours worked by all employees on all contracts. This includes administration and construction. These hours will be recorded with the closeout of a project. It is important to note that these are goals, not requirements, okay? So y'all know the difference between a goal and a requirement. There is no penalty if Section 3 businesses or persons are not hired for this grant. If you're interested, there might be some more information available to you at the TDA web link. Also, you can call me and talk about Section 3 all you would like to. One afternoon or morning, I'll talk to you as long as you want to and answer as many questions. While I'm standing up here, I do want to tell you that the same HUD that oversees the Texas Department of Agriculture CDBG projects oversees the General Land Office CDBG project, same kind of project. Have not heard from the General Land Office on this issue, but I would like it in the record that you have an HMGP project coming up with the General Land Office that you should be getting an award letter on very soon. This Section 3 information applies to that grant as well. So if that's a requirement coming up, I hope this will satisfy that requirement preemptively. So any questions?
The HMGP was an ASAP, and we are okay with that, so.
Well, I'm glad you are, because I woke up this morning and I said ASAP 4 months ago, they announced
Too
our.
many acronyms.
Our-
Well, which,
as soon as possible. But look, you made it to the award list. It took you unfortunately 4 months to get on an award list, and we haven't gotten the award letter. But I hope the contract is coming very soon before any more rain. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, what's HMG?
what's the project?
HMGP.
Oh, gosh, y'all.
Is it one that I can approve for? or-
Yes, sir. It's the one that, remember, we pulled it out of the Tatum stuff, and they gave you an opportunity to put that application in, which we did so long ago, y'all now forgotten about it, which is not fair. But I will, check on that again, and would y'all like me to give you like a little blurb? No?
Sure.
Sure.
No? Why
love
are you
blurbs.
laughing at me?
Because it's all over.
Oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Okay,
All right, well, I'll let y'all know when it gets here, and I think it will be here soon. It's just gonna run like all your other disaster projects, and you should be familiar with that. One person is familiar, and the rest of y'all will all learn together. So, thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Johnny.
Okay, gentlemen, we are an hour and 20 minutes into this meeting, and we are about halfway through. Would you desire to take a break for a few minutes and then?
That'd be great.
Okay. Is there a motion to recess? On do 20 minutes? What's your pleasure?
Let's.
Oh,
Is that what you said? I said it's Friday.
Oh.
Oh, we don't wanna do that.
Well, we don't have that much more.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Let's do 10 minutes.
Okay, so there is a motion to take a recess for 10 minutes.
Sure. Second.
Okay, and then second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
We'll stand recess for 10 minutes.